If you want to know what the city really is, don't look at the skyline. Look at what it throws away. I've driven sanitation in Philadelphia for 7 years. Day shift, rear loader, mostly residential routes that run from the riverside up through neighborhoods where the row houses still lean the same way they leaned 50 years ago. People think garbage work is just smell and muscle, and it is. But it's also patterns. You learn what a block eats. You learn what it fears. You learn which streets go quiet when the weather changes, and which ones get loud because somebody's moving out in a hurry. The job has rules. Most of them are obvious. Don't ride the step with the truck in reverse. Don't compact if someone's hand is in the hopper. Don't grab anything with loose needles. Don't open bags. That last one surprises people, but it's real. We're not supposed to open trash bags. It's a safety thing. You don't know what's in there. And if you rip something, it becomes your problem. You're trained to lift, toss, keep moving. If something's leaking or torn, you either double bag it with city-provided liners, or you tag it and leave it for the resident. That's normal procedure. The special bags are not normal procedure. I didn't learn about them in training. Nobody sits you down on your first day and says, by the way, every Tuesday we collect things that aren't really trash, and we are not allowed to look inside. You learn the way you learn everything in municipal work. Somebody older tells you one sentence you don't understand, and then you see it. And then it's too late to pretend you didn't. My name's Keenan Sloan. I work out of the South Philly yard off Oregon. If you're from here, you know the place fence line, salt pile, a row of trucks with their hoods up like they're all sick. The supervisors call it a facility. We call it the yard. My partner on the truck is Darnell Price. Darnell's been on the job longer than me. He's got the kind of calm you only get after you've seen enough bad mornings that nothing surprises you anymore. He's also the one who told me, on my second Tuesday with the city, don't touch the gray ones. I thought he meant gray bags, like contractor bags, the heavy-duty kind people use for construction debris. Those are a pain because they're heavy and they rip your gloves. I said, yeah, I hate those. Darnell didn't laugh. He just looked at me. Not those, he said. You'll know. It was still dark when we rolled out that morning. Early fall when the air is cool but the city still smells like summer hot concrete, diesel, stale beer in the gutters. The truck's cab had that familiar mix of scents, old vinyl seats, disinfectant wipes, and the faint sweetness of hydraulic fluid. We started our route like normal. Alley pickups, curbside bins, the occasional couch somebody dragged out like the city owes them a free removal. Darnell worked the back while I drove, and we didn't talk much beyond the usual hand signals and quick warnings. Broken glass, loose dog, car cutting too close. Around 6:20, we hit a block I didn't recognize. Not on the map I'd been given. Same row houses, same narrow street, but the vibe was different. No loose trash, no recycling bins tipped over. The sidewalks looked swept. Where are we? I asked, slowing. Darnell hopped up on the step and tapped the side of the cab twice our signal to keep moving forward. Tuesday, he said. That was all. On the curb ahead, spaced every 3 houses like someone measured it, were bags that didn't match anything else. They weren't black, or white, or blue. They were a dull, matte gray, thicker material, almost rubbery. Each one was tied off with a black zip tie, not a nut. The ties were cinched tight enough that the plastic puckered around them, and each bag had a small white label stuck near the top, like a shipping sticker. No address, no name, just a printed barcode and a date, Tuesday's date. I pulled the truck alongside the first set. Darnell jumped down, walked up, and lifted one bag with both hands. It looked heavy, but not the way dirt is heavy. Dense, like the weight was compact and centralized. He didn't swing it, he didn't toss it. He carried it to the hopper like he was handling something fragile, then placed it in carefully. Not gentle enough to be precious, just controlled. Then he stepped back and pointed at me through the rearview mirror. No compactor. I kept my hand off the lever. Darnell loaded the other bags the same way. 2 per house, sometimes 3. Always gray. Always zip-tied. Always that same barcode label. The second I saw him avoid the compactor, my brain started trying to make it make sense. Hazardous waste, medical disposal, some pilot program, evidence collection. I leaned out the window and asked, "What is this?" Darnell didn't look at me. He kept his eyes on the curb like he was counting. "Special bags," he said. "Special how?" He straightened, looked at me finally, and his expression was flat. "Not ours," he said. Then he went back to loading. We finished that block and moved to another. Same pattern. Gray bags, zip ties, barcode stickers. No residents outside. No one waving, no kids running around. The street felt like it was holding its breath. After the third block, I noticed something else. The gray bags weren't mixed with regular trash. On those streets, there was no regular trash out at all. No black bags, no bins, just the gray ones. Like Tuesday for them wasn't trash day. It was something else day. By the time we hit the fifth block, the back of our truck was half full of gray bags, and my skin had started to crawl under my uniform shirt. Not fear exactly. Unease from repetition. Like seeing too many identical boxes in a room and realizing you're not supposed to ask what's inside. Darnell climbed up on the step and slapped the cab. "Transfer," he said. "We're not full," I replied automatically. "Tuesday," he repeated. I drove to the transfer station like I was told. If you've never been to a transfer station, imagine a place built to be unpleasant. Concrete ramps slick with runoff. The air thick with rot and diesel. Gulls circling like they own the sky. It's where the city's garbage gets consolidated before it goes to the incinerator or landfill. We pulled into our lane, but instead of directing us to the usual tipping floor, a supervisor stepped out and waved us to a side bay. A bay I'd never used. It was gated with a chain across the entrance. A sign bolted to the fence wrote 12B, Tuesday only authorized personnel. The supervisor, a guy named Harcourt, who always smelled like menthols, came over with a clipboard. He didn't greet us. He didn't make small talk. He looked at the truck, then at Darnell. "You got him?" he asked. Darnell nodded once. Harcourt's eyes flicked to me. "You knew?" he asked. "Couple weeks," I said. He held my gaze for a beat longer than necessary. "Don't open them," he said. "I wasn't going to," I replied, but it came out defensive. Harcourt didn't care. He unhooked the chain, swung the gate open, and waved me in. The side bay was quieter. The usual chaos of the station beeping loaders, shouting, metal banging, felt dampened here, like someone had built the concrete walls thicker. 2 men in clean coveralls stood by a pallet jack, not city uniforms. No sanitation patches. Their coveralls were light gray with no logos. They wore nitrile gloves and face shields, the kind of PPE you don't wear for normal trash. A third man stood behind them, clipboard in hand, wearing a reflective vest with no department markings. He had a beard trimmed too neatly for city work and boots that looked brand new. He watched our truck like he was inspecting an incoming shipment. Darnell hopped off the step and walked to the back. The bearded man met him there. They didn't shake hands. They didn't introduce themselves. They spoke in low voices I couldn't hear over the idling engine. Then the bearded man glanced at me and made a small motion with 2 fingers. "Shut it down." I killed the engine. The sudden quiet made my ears ring. The coverall guys stepped to the rear of the truck and opened the hopper gate. Not all the way, just enough to reach in. They started removing the gray bags, one by one. They didn't toss them onto the floor. They lifted them, scanned the barcode with a handheld scanner, then placed each bag into a larger rigid tote lined with thick plastic. Each tote had a lid that snapped shut with metal clamps, like evidence, like biohazard, like something you don't want leaking into open air. I watched from the cab with my hands on the wheel, feeling useless. One of the gray bags shifted as they lifted it, not a big motion, just a small settling movement like the contents redistributed. It made my stomach tighten. I told myself it was liquid. Then I saw the coverall guy flinch. Just a tiny recoil in his shoulders, like he'd felt something through the gloves. He recovered fast, but I saw it. The bearded man said something to him, a reprimand maybe. The coverall guy nodded and kept going. Darnell didn't look surprised. When they finished, the bearded man clipped his pen to the clipboard and walked over to my window. Up close, his eyes looked tired but focused. The kind of tired that comes from schedules, not sleep deprivation. "Driver," he said. "Keenan," I replied automatically. Darnell's head snapped up. The bearded man's eyes sharpened. I felt my face go hot. I didn't know what I'd done wrong yet, but I knew I'd done something. The bearded man stared at me a beat, then looked away like he decided to let it go. "You'll run the rest of your route normal," he said. "Tuesday bags are done." "What are they?" I asked before I could stop myself. His expression didn't change. "Not trash," he said. "That's not an answer." "It is," he replied. Then he stepped back and walked away. Darnell climbed into the cab without looking at me. He shut the door hard enough that the frame rattled. For a minute, we just sat there in the quiet side bay with the smell of garbage muted behind concrete walls. Then Darnell said very calmly, "Don't give them your name." "What?" I asked. He stared straight ahead through the windshield. "On Tuesday, don't say your name to anybody who ain't city." "Why?" I pressed. Darnell's jaw tightened. "Because Tuesday's not about trash," he said. "It's about keeping certain things moving. And once something knows your name, it's easier for it to follow the truck." My mouth went dry. I laughed once because it was the only response my body could manufacture that wasn't panic. "That's crazy," I said. Darnell didn't laugh back. He reached into the glove compartment, pulled out a folded sheet of paper, and handed it to me without looking. It was a route map. But not our route. A different one, highlighted in red, with streets I'd never worked circled like targets. At the top, written in Harcourt's blocky handwriting, 10 Harrys, special pickup. No opening, no compactor, no names. I stared at the paper until the words blurred slightly. Then Darnell said, low, like he didn't want the walls to hear, "You want to stay on this job. You do what the paper says." I folded the map and put it in my pocket. We drove out of the side bay and back into the normal chaos of the transfer station. And the moment we crossed that threshold, the muffled quiet vanished. Noise and stink and movement swallowed us like nothing had happened, but my hands felt different on the steering wheel. Because now I knew there was a part of the city's routine that wasn't meant to be seen. And I'd already broken the first rule by speaking my name out loud. After that first Tuesday, I tried to pretend the gray bags were just another city program I didn't understand. Philly has 100 systems running under the surface. Some of them are official. Some of them are favors. Some of them are leftovers from old scandals that never fully died. You learn not to poke at anything that isn't in your job description. The problem was, once you've seen the special route, everything else looks like a cover. I kept thinking about the way the coverall guys handled those bags. Can, lift, seal, clamp. I kept thinking about the way one of them flinched when the bag shifted. And I kept thinking about the bearded man looking at me after I said my name, like I'd handed him a leak he didn't want to deal with. Darnell didn't talk about it after that. Not at the yard, not in the cab, not even as a joke. Tuesday came around again the next week, and he showed up looking more tired than usual. Eyes red at the rims like he hadn't slept much. Before we rolled out, he took me aside behind our truck where the supervisors couldn't easily hear. "You keep your mouth shut today," he said. "I didn't do anything," I replied. Darnell stared at me like I was a kid arguing about a rule after the rule already mattered. "You said your name," he said. "That's doing something?" "It's my name," I said, annoyed despite myself. "I say it every day." Darnell's expression didn't change. "Not on Tuesdays." He climbed into the cab and slammed the door. Conversation over. We ran our normal route first. Regular trash, regular stink, regular block personalities. Then around 6:15, like clockwork, Darnell tapped the cab twice and said, "Turn." I turned onto a street I'd never worked. Row houses but quieter, fewer cars. Sidewalks too clean, no kids, no loose litter. And then I saw them, gray bags on the curb, spaced evenly, always in pairs, sometimes 3, same material, same zip ties, same barcode stickers. I kept my eyes forward and did what Darnell told me. No compactor. Slow stops. Let him load them carefully. The bags looked heavier this week. Or maybe I was just noticing. The way Darnell's shoulders tightened when he lifted them. The way he didn't let them bump the hopper walls. The way he kept his fingers away from the zip tie like it could snag him. Halfway through the second block, a dog barked from behind a fence one quick angry burst, and then went silent abruptly like someone had shut it off. Darnell paused mid-lift and looked down the street. "What?" I asked low. He didn't answer. He just loaded the bag and slapped the cab. "Move." We finished the gray bag segment and went to the transfer station side bay again. Same gate. Same sign, Route 12B, Tuesday only. Same coverall guys. Same rigid totes. But the bearded man wasn't there. Instead, a woman stood by the clipboard station. She wore a navy jacket with no logos and a lanyard that faced inward so I couldn't read it. Hair pulled back. No gloves. No face shield. She looked like she didn't need protection from whatever we were hauling. She watched the coverall guy scan and seal the bags without speaking. When she finally walked over to our cab, she didn't look at Darnell. She looked at me. "You're the new driver," she said. I didn't answer with my name. I just nodded. Her eyes narrowed slightly like she'd noticed I'd learned. "Good," she said. Then she did something that made my stomach tighten. She held up a small handheld scanner and aimed it at the cab window like she was scanning a barcode on glass. I leaned back instinctively. "What are you?" "Hold still," she said. The scanner beeped once, then twice. She frowned at the screen. Darnell's hands tightened on his knees. He didn't move. The woman tapped a button. Scanned again. And this time she nodded once like she'd gotten the reading she wanted. She leaned closer to my window. "You said your name last week," she said. Matter of fact. My throat went dry. "Yeah," to the guy. "Don't," she cut in. "Don't give me a narrative. I don't want your story. I want compliance." I stared at her, anger flaring because she was talking to me like I was an idiot who'd broken a simple safety rule. "What is this?" I asked. "Tell me what we're hauling." She studied my face in the same assessing way I'd seen in supervisors before they decide whether you're a problem. Then she said, "We're hauling what's left when the city fails to clean up after itself." That's the only answer you'll get," she said. She stepped back and watched the coverall guys clamp the last tote shut. Then she made a small gesture toward the gate. "Go," she said. "And if you hear anything in the hopper on the way out, you keep driving. You do not stop to investigate." The engine started. We rolled out. Darnell didn't speak until we were 2 blocks away from the transfer station. Then he said, "That scanner. That's new." "What was she scanning?" I asked. Darnell's voice got lower. "You." That sat in my stomach like cold lead. For the next 2 weeks, Tuesdays stayed the same. Gray bags, side bay. Scan and seal. No names. I started to treat it like a ritual. Something you do right because doing it wrong has consequences you don't get to understand. Then the 3rd week, the consequences showed up anyway. It happened on a Monday night, which is how I knew it wasn't just Tuesday stuff. I was off shift, home in my apartment in South Philly. 2nd floor walk-up, narrow hall, radiator heat. I was half asleep on the couch with a game on low volume. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Unknown number. I let it ring. Most unknown calls are spam. It stopped. Then buzzed again. Same number. I sighed and answered, annoyed. "Hello?" Silence. Then, very faint, I heard something through the line that made my skin crawl. A hydraulic whine. The sound of a garbage truck compactor engaging. I sat up straight. "Who is this?" The whine continued, steady, like the caller was standing near a running truck. Then a voice came through. Not a normal voice. Not someone speaking into a phone. It sounded like a voice pushed through metal, flattened, compressed, and it said my name, first and last. My mouth went dry. How? The voice didn't answer. It said my name again, a little slower, like it was testing the syllables. Then the line went dead. I stared at my phone like it had become something else. Across the room, my kitchen trash can lid clicked softly as it settled. Just normal plastic shifting. Except I hadn't touched it. I got up and went into the kitchen. The trash can was the simple kind, with a foot pedal. Black bag liner inside. Nothing special. No gray bags. No zip ties. I stared at it for a long moment, then reached down and pressed the pedal. The lid lifted with a soft plastic creak. The smell that came out wasn't trash. It was warm and sweet like spoiled fruit left in sun. I stepped back, heart pounding. The bag inside was full. I hadn't taken it out in 3 days. I could see the top knotted, and tight around the knot was a black zip tie. My stomach turned. I hadn't put a zip tie on it. I don't keep zip ties in my kitchen. I don't use zip ties for trash. I leaned closer without touching it. There was a white label stuck to the bag near the top. Barcode. Date. Tomorrow's date. Tuesday. I backed away from the trash can like it might lunge. My hands were shaking. I grabbed my phone and called Darnell. He answered on the first ring, voice thick with sleep. "What?" he said. "It's in my apartment," I whispered. Silence on the line. Then Darnell's voice turned sharp, fully awake. "Don't open it." "I didn't," I said. "Darnell, there's a gray bag in my—" "Don't say it," he snapped. "Don't say what it is. Just listen." I swallowed hard. Darnell said, "You said your name the first Tuesday." "Yes. And you keep thinking about it," he said. "You keep wanting to know. That's how it sticks." "I didn't do anything," I whispered, and it sounded pathetic. Darnell exhaled hard. "You did. You gave it a handle. Now it thinks you're part of the route." My throat tightened. "What do I do?" Darnell didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was lower. "You take it outside," he said. "You put it on the curb at 4:30 a.m. exactly. You don't drag it. You carry it. And you don't tell anybody. You don't even look at the label." "And then what?" I asked. Darnell said, "Then we pick it up." The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen staring at my own trash bag with its zip tie and barcode, like it belonged to someone else. I didn't sleep. I sat on a chair by the back door until 4:20, watching the clock. At 4:30, I put on gloves and lifted the bag carefully with both hands like Darnell did. It was heavier than my normal trash should have been. Dense. I carried it down the stairs and out to the curb. The street was quiet, wet from a light rain. Streetlights made the pavement shine. I set the bag down on the curb, stepped back, and went inside without looking at the label. At 5:05, I heard the familiar rumble of our truck on the block. I peeked through my blinds. Darnell was on the back step. He saw the bag immediately. He didn't hesitate. He lifted it the way he lifted the others, careful, controlled, and placed it in the hopper. He looked up at my window, not directly, but close enough. Then he tapped the side of the truck twice. No compactor. And they drove away with my bag inside. I stood there in the dark, shaking, realizing the special route wasn't just something we ran through the city. It could run through you. After they took the bag from my curb, I stopped trying to rationalize it. You can do that for a while. Tell yourself the city has weird programs. Tell yourself it's medical waste. Tell yourself somebody's playing a prank. But once a gray bag appears in your own kitchen with tomorrow's date on it, the sane explanations stop being comforting and start being insults. I didn't go into work Tuesday. I called in sick. I used the same lie everyone uses: stomach bug, fever, can't keep anything down. The supervisor didn't argue. They don't argue unless they need you badly, and they always have backups for drivers. I spent the morning in my apartment with all the lights on, listening for my phone to ring again. It didn't. That silence felt worse than the call had, like whatever had done it didn't need to keep proving it could. Around noon, someone knocked on my door. 3 knocks, evenly spaced. Not aggressive, not friendly, just precise. My mouth went dry. I didn't move. The knocks came again, same spacing. 3. Then a voice through the door. Not Darnell's, not a neighbor's. A voice that sounded like it was being spoken through a thick plastic bag. Keenan, it said. Not shouting, not asking, just stating my name like it belonged to it. My hands started shaking so badly I had to grip the edge of the kitchen counter. The voice said, route adjustment, then silence. I stood there for a full minute, waiting for another knock, waiting for footsteps in the hall, waiting for anything that would let me categorize it. Nothing. I walked to the door slowly, keeping my breath shallow, and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. No one walking away. No shadow at the stairwell. Just the chipped paint and the dim hall light. I opened the door anyway because curiosity is a disease and I already had it. On the floor in front of my door was a bag. Not a gray special bag. A clear plastic evidence-style bag sealed with a white paper tag stapled to it. Inside the clear bag was my city ID badge, the one I'd been wearing for only a month. My photo laminated. My name printed in clean black letters. The badge I'd been told to stop showing on Tuesdays. On the paper tag, in neat block handwriting, it said, Return to subject. Conflianserition. My knees went weak. I grabbed the clear bag and shut my door, locked it, then locked the deadbolt even though it was redundant. I set the bag on my table and stared at it like it might start moving. Someone was marking me. Not as a person, as a parcel, as something that could be returned. I called Darnell again. He answered immediately this time, like he'd been waiting. You didn't come in, he said. I'm not going, I snapped. Not if. Listen, he cut in. You got a drop? I swallowed. What does that mean? Something at your door, he said. Something tagged. I stared at the clear bag on my table. My voice dropped. Yeah. Darnell went silent for a second. Then he said, Okay, that means it's escalated. I said, and it came out like a hiss. Darnell didn't correct me. He didn't tell me not to say it. You need to come to the yard, he said. Not en route to the yard. Now. I'm not allowed in if I'm not scheduled. Tell Harcourt you're here to sign paperwork, Darnell said. He'll know. How does he? He knows, Darnell said, flat. Just do it. I didn't want to leave my apartment. Leaving felt like stepping into a trap, but staying felt worse, because the knocks had already come to my door and the voice had used my name like a label. So I grabbed the clear evidence bag with my badge inside, shoved it in a backpack, and drove to the yard. The sanitation yard in daylight looks less ominous than it does at 4 a.m., but it still has that same feeling of a place where things get sorted and moved and forgotten. Trucks lined up, mechanics under hoods, the smell of oil and wet concrete. Harcourt was in the small office by the dispatch window, leaning over a clipboard. When I walked in, he looked up like he'd been expecting me. You don't look sick, he said. I need to talk, I replied. Harcourt's eyes flicked over me, then toward the door, then back. Come on, he said, and led me through a side hallway I'd never been down. There was a second office area behind the main one, smaller. No windows, one table, 2 chairs, a fan that rattled. Darnell was already there, standing with his arms crossed. He looked angry in a contained way, like he'd been holding it in for years, and now my stupidity had poured gasoline on it. He nodded toward the chair. Sit. I sat. Harcourt shut the door and stood with his back against it, like he was making sure no one walked in. Darnell said, Show him. I pulled us a clear evidence bag and set it on the table. Harcourt looked at it without touching it. Yeah, he said quietly. That's one of theirs. Who are they? I asked. Harcourt looked at Darnell like he didn't want to answer. Darnell answered for him. Special waste recovery, he said. That's what the paperwork calls it. They ain't sanitation. They ain't public works. They're a separate chain. I stared at him. What's in the bags? Darnell's jaw tightened. Don't. I already have one in my kitchen, I snapped. I already got called by my own number. I already had something knock on my door and say my name. I don't get to pretend I'm safe if I don't ask. Harcourt rubbed his face like he was tired. Darnell's eyes stayed on me. You want the truth? Fine. But you're going to regret it. He pulled a folded packet from his pocket and slapped it on the table. It was a photocopy of something that looked like a work order, but the header wasn't the city seal. It was a plain block of text with a number and the words, Special Collection Authorization. Underneath were checkboxes, pickup, transfer, inculation, hold, quarantine hold. At the bottom, in a section labeled Desertrants, it said, Contained organic byproduct. Tuvs they Swickler do not open, do not compact, do not to conley, root, do not speak names in presence of bog. I felt my stomach roll. Byproduct of what? I asked. Darnell didn't answer immediately. He glanced at Harcourt again. Harcourt shook his head, small and hopeless. Darnell said, You ever hear about sinkholes on old blocks? Basements collapsing? Folks saying they smell sweetness in the drains? My throat went dry. I thought about the warm, spoiled fruit smell from my kitchen trash can when the bag appeared. Darnell continued, You ever hear about a house fire where they say it started in the walls, but there's no wiring? You ever hear about a row house where everybody moved out overnight and the landlord says it was a mold issue? I stared at him, trying to keep my breathing steady. Darnell said, Sometimes the city grows stuff. What? I whispered. Harcourt spoke up then, voice low. You think a city is just buildings? It's layers. Old tunnels. Old rivers. Old basements that got filled in. Utility corridors. Nobody mapped right. Places the ground stays warm even in winter. He swallowed. Sometimes something takes advantage of that. Darnell tapped the packet. The bags are what you get when it sheds. I stared. Sheds what? Darnell's eyes were hard. Pieces. Cast-offs. The stuff it pushes out of itself when it's full. My skin crawled. Full of what? Darnell didn't answer. He pointed at the clear bag with my badge. It's marking you, he said, because you gave it your name, and you gave it attention. And now it knows you're part of the route, Harcourt said. They can handle it as long as it stays on schedule. What does handle mean? I asked. Darnell leaned forward. It means we keep collecting. We keep moving it. We keep it from sitting in one place long enough to get ideas. I swallowed hard. Where do they take it? Harcourt's mouth tightened. You don't want that answer. I do, I said, and I hated the way my voice shook. Darnell stared at me for a long moment. Then he said, The river facility. I frowned. The incinerator. Darnell nodded once. Except, not the public side. There's a fenced lane in back. Tuesdays only. Same coveralls, same scanners. They don't burn it right away. Harcourt added, They hold it. For what? I asked. Darnell's voice dropped. For it to come pick it up. Silence filled the little room. Even the fan seemed louder. I stared at him. It, you're saying, something comes for it? Darnell nodded once. Not a person. Not a truck. It doesn't show up on cameras right. It just reduces the stacks. My mouth went dry. Harcourt rubbed his hands together. And as long as Tuesday's cycle stays clean, it stays quiet. Darnell pointed at me. But now you ain't clean. I swallowed. What does that mean? Darnell's expression turned grim. It means you got a bag scheduled for your house. It means it can put a label on you. It means it knocked on your door and used your name. My stomach rolled again. So what do I do? Darnell exhaled hard. You stop being interesting. How? You transfer, Darnell said. Out of the Tuesday route. Out of the yard if you can. Move. Change your number. Stop thinking you can solve it. And if I don't? I asked, even though I already knew. Darnell's eyes didn't blink. Then one Tuesday you're gonna come home and there'll be a gray bag on your kitchen floor with your name on it, and you'll feel real damn curious about what's inside. I couldn't stop my hands from shaking. And if I open it? Harcourt spoke, voice barely above a whisper. Then you become part of the pickup. I stared at them both, trying to understand what part of the pickup meant without making them say it. Darnell reached across the table and slid the clear evidence bag back toward me. Take your badge back, he said, and listen to me. Tonight you put salt at your thresholds, doorway, windowsills, drain. Not because it's magic, because it hates boundaries it didn't make. I blinked. Salt? Just do it, Darnell snapped. Harcourt opened the door. And Keenan, he said, using my name like it was dangerous to do so. No more questions. I left the yard with my badge in my backpack and a sick feeling in my gut. On the drive home, every trash can on every corner looked different to me. Every black bag looked like it might have a zip tie hidden in the knot. When I got to my building, I bought 2 tubs of salt from the corner store and poured lines at my door like a lunatic. I poured it around my sink drain, my bathtub drain, the base of my toilet. I slept on my couch with the lights on, waiting for knocks. They didn't come, but at 4:30 a.m., I heard a garbage truck outside my window. Not a truck. A different engine tone. A different hydraulic rhythm. I pulled the blind back just enough to see. A plain white truck with no city markings rolled slowly down the block, stopping at each curve as if checking addresses. Its headlights were off, only a small amber beacon on top rotating silently. The driver didn't get out. The truck just idled for a few seconds at each stop, then moved on. When it reached my building, it paused longer. Too long. Then it continued down the street and disappeared around the corner. I stood there in the dark, salt on my floor, and realized the part Darnell hadn't said out loud. The Tuesday route wasn't just a schedule. It was a hunger timetable. And now that it knew my name, it knew where to circle.